Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here is the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
And welcome. This is, in fact, A Different Perspective, and I am truly Kevin Randle. I've always wanted to start one of these broadcasts by saying breaking news, but since we're on tape, there really isn't no breaking news, and I'm not sure where to go with that. I will say, however, I have been looking into this thing with Louis Elanzio. Got to get it right here in my head for some reason. With the ATIP and the idea that the Nimitz UFO sightings and all of that thing, and the idea that he had been a director of the program, the ATIP program, and there's some controversy about that. I've only seen a couple of things suggesting he might have inflated his credentials, but I've also seen some stuff from my friend George Knapp suggesting that he's exactly who he says he is. So I'm still looking into that, and as soon as I get an answer, I'll let you all know what it is. I suspect he probably had some important role in the ATIP program. Because of some of the things I've seen, but we'll take a look at that and see if we can't clarify that. I also wanted to mention that I will be at the Roswell Festival this year, and I'm looking to interview a number of the participants. So take a look at the festival website because it gives you a list of the speakers, and if there's somebody particular you'd like me to try to hook up with, let me know, and I'll try to do that there. I was going to interview Stan Friedman at the festival, but unfortunately, I guess that won't take place now, which is a kind of a sad situation. I also wanted to let you know that there are some other fine programs about the paranormal on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at xzbn.net, or for those of you who are in a different time zone, a different area, it's xzbn.net. And you can find a listing of those programs on the X-Zone broadcast or the X Zone website. So take a look at that. And don't forget to take a look at the International UFO Reporting and Research Center. The website is www.uforrc.com. And having all of that out of the way now, I will announce I'm joined now by Bruce Fenton, who wrote Hybrid Human Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy. Bruce is a multidisciplinary researcher, adventurer, and writer. He is the editor of the popular paleoanthropology website, ancientnews.net, the author of The Forgotten Exodus, the Into Africa Theory, and co-author of Hybrid Humans, Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy, which I just mentioned. Fenton graduated from Angela Ruskin University with a higher national diploma in information systems. His expeditions to mysterious ancient ruins in the Amazon jungle and the Georgian Caucasus, and that's not Georgia in the United States, for those of you who are not paying attention, have seen him featured in the UK Telegraph newspaper and on the Science Channel. Bruce Fenton, welcome to A Different Perspective.
Thank you very much, and sorry for providing you such a mouthful of a bio there, but hopefully it gives people an idea of the kind of things that I'm involved with, which is fairly broad. Anything strange, mysterious, and anomalous, really. Probably a lot like yourself, Kevin. You know, I've got wide interests.
Well, I would like to say that your bio is one of the shortest that I've been given to do this thing, even though there was a couple of tongue twisters in there for me. but that's okay, because I don't pretend to be a real live radio personality anyhow. So there you go.
Sure. No, it's about the content more than the bios, isn't it? It's what we actually do in our research that matters, I think.
Well, I think one of the things, and I've learned this many years ago, is, and it kind of brings up a different problem, which is people claiming credentials they don't have or military rank they don't have, and it's a way of kind of installing instant credibility on somebody until, of course, you check into their credentials and learn that they've kind of inflated things. So we all have to be careful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, all too often there is, we do find that there is a bit of inflation to stories. I know you highlighted at the beginning there that there's obviously that's an issue at the moment, isn't it, as to whether or not like Louis Elizondo and his, has got the rank that he was meant to have. So these things are always coming up as issues in the community, isn't it? That, are people who they say they are. Obviously, then on, we have more extreme situations where it appears people just say that they were in the military, and there's no proof they were ever in it. So we have, obviously there's a whole range of these complexities to this subject.
Well, with the Louis Elizondo thing, I do want to say that the suggestion he may not be who he was is all comes back to a single source, and it's based on not being able to get him for a interview on a radio program and that sort of thing. So there might be some hostility there, which I think we have to be careful of when we start talking about people's credentials. Yep. And so that's why I've gone to George Knapp, who is involved in a lot of this sort of research and has some documentation, which I thought he was going to get to me by this morning, but he didn't get it done. So I don't have that information in front of me right now. So we have to be careful, because he may be exactly who he says he is. If people check on my background and say, well, he claims to be a lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army, if they write to St. Louis, they're going to learn those things are true, that I can back up this claim of mine. So we have to look at all of that very carefully, which is really off topic here, because I really wanted to talk about hybrid humans.
That's all right. I mean, I don't mind just quickly whipping through the current events, but yeah, no, it's a bit of a different kind of project to many of those that are making the news at the moment, which is obviously the current events. As you've just touched on, of course, with all the History Channel show going on, we've got a big buzz on that, but there's also a much older aspect to the phenomena, and these objects, visitations, contact experiences, and that's certainly the core of the material in our book, the book I've done with my wife. But it does involve, yes, some current events too. But I guess it'd be more in the category of ancient aliens and that kind of area of the research. So just for people who don't know much about the book and the work. And I guess, I can probably give you an initial overview? I mean, where would you like me to start? Do I give a bit of an overview to the project, or?
Yeah, I was going to say give us a little background on the book, but before we do that, I wanted to say my undergraduate work was in anthropology, so I'm versed in some of this topic.
That's good.
And I've of course looked at the ancient astronauts stuff quite a bit too, especially when it first came out by Eric von Daniken back in the 1960s. So anyway, your book is Hybrid Humans, Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy. And that kind of sums it up a little bit, but give me a little bit more on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing people will notice from that, of course, is I'm giving a fairly specific time and a very deep time. You know, we're not talking about, you know, visitations to the Egyptians or the Sumerians or, you know, these kind of areas that have been, let's be honest, pretty well covered, you know, if not overly done in dozens of books. The idea that there was, you know, Anunnaki visitations, you know, most of your listeners, I'm sure, have encountered those subjects, you know, if not in books, then certainly on Ancient Aliens, the TV show. I'm going back way beyond that. And the reason for that, it really came out of a different project I was doing, which was, I was involved with some contact experience. My wife and I had some of our own personal, we've had a lot of strange experiences, but there was a contact type experiences going on back in 2012. You know, when you say contact type experience, you're talking about contact with aliens? Certainly with an intelligence that I would have to say seems to be, you know, alien to human beings. Yeah, I mean, I'm wary. I know that we're at this point where it's hard to say, you know, is the intelligence from another planet? Is it from another time? Is it from another dimension? So, you know, people, excuse me if at times I try to be a little bit obtuse on that, just because sometimes it's quite difficult, and I think these things overlap. But I can certainly say it's an intelligence that is not a human being, you know, talking to us, or certainly not one from the present moment and our dimension. You know, something quite extraordinary was in contact with us. That's where it sort of started at. And that led to a collaborative book project called Ancient Aliens in Australia with a father and son research team, Stephen and Evan Strong. They actually featured on Ancient Aliens the episode about Australia. So, again, some of the people out there may have seen that. We connected to another person through them. Now, this is a lady called Valerie Barrow, and she's really important to the book and to other things I'm involved in at the moment. Valerie Barrow came into contact with an artifact which was held by the Aboriginal people of, I believe it's Central North Australia. Now, I have every reason to believe that this artifact is not of this world, and I know that obviously you've dealt a lot with things that are not of this world, debris, artifacts, you know, that kind of the remnants of events. So, I mean, obviously you're probably in familiar ground when I start talking about strange things that are found in, you know, in places. And this artifact has the uncanny ability to transfer information. Now, they're known to the Aboriginal people as the ancient Altringa stones. These artifacts, which are amongst the most sacred that they have, which will usually be kept away from the people, only interacted with by what they call the clever men or clever women. You know, these kind of the shamans, right, of the culture.
Let me interrupt here, sure, because I'm going to have to break away for a few moments here. I'm talking with Bruce Fenton. The book is Hybrid Humans, Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Legacy. And take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com if you have a chance, because I usually have additional information or other things up there that you can take a look at. Gives you some more information about what's going on in the program. We will be back right after this and talking about hybrid humans.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
I am here with Bruce Fenton, the author of Hybrid Humans, Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy and When We Broke. We were talking about his adventures. Did you go to Australia? You went to Australia to interview the people, correct?
I've met with Valerie in Australia. I was living in Australia for a little while.
Okay, and you were talking about artifacts that the Aborigines used to communicate or transfer knowledge, information?
Yeah, basically there was an artifact, which if people want to go away and have a look at it, they can Google objects called Chiringa stones, right? But the legends are that amongst these, there are some truly ancient artifacts, the original Chiringa stones, which are considered to have been left in the dream time, the creation time when the first humans were made, engineered, created by these visiting beings, right? So they talk about these objects as having a kind of consciousness and that they can interact with people. So this is in the mythology. But what happened is one of these artifacts was basically brought to the house of a lady called Valerie Barrow, who I mentioned just before, and she was asked to caretake it whilst the person who had it with her was trying to locate the tribe who it should go back to, right? But what happened is whilst it was in her house, it began communicating with her. She started getting in a whole load of information in her head. This is voice-to-skull type, what we call technology, if we like. I would say it's a voice-to-skull technology, that this thing began to actually relay information about human history, explaining a whole lost chapter, basically a visitation hundreds of thousands of years ago by a highly advanced extraterrestrial race who went on to engineer early hominins to create the ancestors of modern humans. So we're going back hundreds of thousands of years.
So when you're saying hybrid humans, you're not talking about Homo sapiens sapiens. You're talking about the hominid ancestors of the Homo sapiens, of our race.
Yeah, the initial hominin that's being engineered, that's right, is not a Homo sapiens. This is the origins of Homo sapiens, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, all large-brained members of our human family are, in my view, and from the evidence I've collected, the results of this visitation 780,000 years ago. And I can be quite precise on this.
So the information came from an artifact that Valerie Burroughs had, and it communicated that information directly to her?
It did. And the thing is, obviously the initial thing people think, well, okay, here we are with the woo, the woo-woo. But the way I looked at this was, there was a whole load of information. She published a book back in 2003 called Altringa, When the First Ancestors Were Created. So there was a lot of information. It's obviously time-stamped. I know that she can't have got anything from the present time because it's published 2003, which is helpful. Also, obviously, I met with her and talked with her. So, right, between the information I got, I looked at it and I thought, right, is there anything in here that we can actually validate? So this isn't just another one of those stories, where did they come, did they not come? Because obviously you and I, we both know there's lots of those out there. We don't really need another one, right? What I'm interested in is validation. So,
yeah, I was going to say, how do we validate this 800,000-year-old
absolutely
claim?
That's the key to it. The reason why I took this on and why I thought it was worth doing is because there was three elements of this narrative that potentially could be validated. Now, the first one was a description of the craft, what happened to it, the way it was destroyed, right? So we have a very large ship carrying about 50,000 beings on board is described, crystalline, right? Not metal. And it comes into orbit around our planet. There is an event where it's destroyed. It's described as melting and raining down across a large region, right? So the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, can I find any debris from this craft? Because, of course, that's a massive tick if I can match melted crystalline debris from an orbiting object in the remote prehistory, right? So that was the first one. The second one that I wanted to match is there's a description of 5 years after this event, there is a multi-directional asteroid bombardment of planet Earth, which is deliberate. This is not a meteorite swarm. This is a revenge mission for the destruction of the mothership. Then there is a third event, which is the engineering of the ancestors of Homo sapiens at the same time period. So I'm looking, of course, to validate these three things, and they must all line up in time, not just all have happened, in reality, but also line up to the same time. So I quietly went about doing that, and I'll tell you now, if I hadn't been able to validate any of this, I would not have written a book, and I wouldn't be on your show talking to you, because I don't like to unnecessarily embarrass myself by coming out with something that has no basis. So I'll start by saying that that's where it begins, and I've validated all three of those. Okay,
the finding of the crystalline debris. Let's talk about that. How did you validate that? What proved that to you?
Right. So I knew approximately where I wanted to look, because amongst the information was also the claim that the survivors came down in Australia. Right. So I'm thinking if you have a large craft, it's destroyed in orbit, that the survivors are going to come down more or less straight down, in the way that you're coming from a disaster. They're trying to reach the surface as quick as they can. So I'm thinking, well, this craft is likely to have been destroyed in geostationary orbit above Australia, right? So is there any debris that matches up to the destruction of a large crystalline artifact in orbit? Crazily enough, went into the NASA papers, and what you find is that they say around 780,000 years ago, it seems that there was a large object in orbit, like they consider it a natural moon, but an object made of around 80% silica. Now you think of that for a natural moon, around 80% silica, and that it, for some reason, breaks up. Pieces of it rain down across Australia, and we have something called australite tektites, right? And they have an unusual composition. We know they're extraterrestrial. They also have an unusual form, which is called a tektite button. It's unique in the geology of our planet in all 4.5 billion years. So whenever you have a unique in 4.5 billion years, you have an anomaly. And of course, in our fields, anomalies is really what we're looking for.
But isn't it possible that this was in fact a natural phenomenon, a natural orbiting thing, a natural moon, as opposed to an alien spacecraft?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why I'd say not. Firstly, NASA tells us that the silica that is left over is from melted quartz, right? And quartz doesn't form in space, in meteorites and comets. It only really forms in planetary systems, right? So that's straight away you've got a problem there, because if you've got something that's 80% quartz, the silica is from melted quartz, there's no known bodies like that. We don't get quartz asteroids or quartz meteorites, raining down. So that in itself, again, you've got a giant anomaly. Now, why is quartz important? What is it we use for computer processing, right? We use these silica networks, yeah? So if anyone goes to and looks to see, well, what do the cutting-edge scientists tell us that they expect to see with advanced extraterrestrials? They expect most of them to inhabit vast silica networks and using the processing power of these vast networks. So now you have an object about 1 kilometer in diameter, made almost entirely from silica, that is orbiting our planet, right? Made from quartz that shouldn't be there, right? Shouldn't be orbiting our planet. And then for no reason at all, in their view, just explodes, right? Rains down across the planet. So straight away you have a series of anomalies. And this has been a mystery in science for 100 years, right? They've been analyzing this material, trying to work out how this happened, because first they thought it'd be an impact, but there is no crater. There's no impact.
But often with meteor falls and that sort of thing, there is no impact crater, because the thing explodes in midair, and so you get a rain of debris, but you don't really get an impact crater.
Yeah, so one of the things they've looked at, they wanted to see how could you get, I should clarify, that the debris field stretches from Antarctica to South China. Right. So now if people conceptualize how big a debris field we're really talking about now. So if you imagine, even if there was an impact or breakup, first of all, the debris field is unique, again, in the history of our planet because it is vast. It's covering something like, there's pieces, fragments that cross something like about a third of the planet's surface. I mean, it's on an astounding scale. The second point as well we should loop back to is keep in mind, I'm looking for material that matches something that's already been transmitted in a message, right? So the fact that the message is describing this and then I'm finding the corresponding evidence is the first key point. Secondly, the story of the Australite tektites is full of anomalies that for years they thought perhaps it was a piece of the moon. That was disproved. Then they thought maybe it was a comet impact. That's been disproved. They've gone through all these boxes because what they found is that the only way this can have formed is by something exploding in space, not just in our atmosphere, where, you say an asteroid coming down, hitting the atmosphere and breaking up, but in space, because these button forms of the tektite are basically made from spheres that formed from liquid crystal in space. As anyone knows, in a vacuum, liquid takes a sphere form. These then cooled instantly. And then they moved down into the atmosphere, reheated, and had secondary melting. And that's where they ended up being these shield shapes. And so the only way that can have formed is in space. So again, they had another problem. Well, why would this moon up in space, orbiting, explode out of nowhere? Bear in mind, I've already got a message here, a transmission saying that there's this craft up there in space, which has been hit with energy weapons, blown to bits, and we have an exact correspondence, right, with an object, crystalline object, that has somehow exploded in space. It's in these obscure NASA papers. It's not I certainly don't think it's well known. Until I went looking for correspondence to this message, I'd never heard of this stuff. I'll be quite honest with you. So that was the first part of it. So, I mean, then, of course...
Since we're going to get to the second part of it,
sure.
I bet, in just a moment. Sure. But I'm going to have to take a break, and I'm going to ask you when we come back if you can give us the name of a couple of those papers so people can research those as well on their own. But the book is Hybrid Humans, the Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy. I'm talking about that with Bruce Fenton, who is the author of the book with his wife. And I'm not going to go through the name again. My blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And let's just for fun mention once again that there's wonderful paranormal programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. So take a look at xcbn.net and you can find something that'll, I'm sure, trip your fancy. We will be back right after this with Bruce Fenton.
How would your life change if you could develop the business and personal skills that you need in order to make more money? Do you want to learn how to achieve your big life goals faster? Then go to findhiddenmoney.com and get the Goal for It online course. The course teaches you how you can set and achieve your biggest goals while completely overcoming the roadblocks to your goals so that you can realize your dreams and imagine more success. Go to findhiddenmoney.com.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hides can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Did you expect your business to flourish, but instead it plateaued or didn't get off the ground yet? Would you like to achieve massive goals and discover new sources of income within your business? When you're ready to experience that type of success with fast results, Cindy Hendricks is the business coach for you. Her work with entrepreneurs and business owners has been life-changing. To get you and your business where you want to be, go to imaginemoresuccess.com.
Has the fear of public speaking stalled your business or personal life? What would you give to develop and maintain supreme confidence? Have an invaluable private program to always perform at your best. Imagine how you would feel. You can have all that and so much more today with Thomas Hyde's life-changing course called Number One Fear Unleashed. Visit numberonefear.com and be liberated from your fear of public speaking.
I am here with Bruce Fenton. We're talking about hybrid humans and some of the evidence about that. When we went away, we were going to get to, I guess, the second point, that the second validation you were about to talk to when I so rudely interrupted you to go away. So what is the second validation?
Sure. Okay, so we're told that after this event, the destruction of this craft, survivors reaching the planet's surface, there is a decision made, which is that they can no longer colonize this planet. This is a colonizing mission, right? They can't do that. The main ship's been destroyed. What they decide instead is they're going to modify an existing hominin. But 5 years after this decision is made and this event has happened, another group arrives at our planet that is connected with them. There's an alliance, is described. Different beings in an alliance out there in the cosmos, various kinds. Some of them multidimensional, some of them biological, some of them crystalline. As weird as people could think. There's this alliance described. Another group, these entities who are humanoid but cat-like humanoids, arrive, and they are more militaristic than the colony ship. These are kind of police, if we like, for a better word, or military that's used. They arrive and they make contact and they say, do you want to leave with us? These survivors say, no, we're going to carry on with this project. However, they then decide that, they are going to tackle the issue of this other hostile group who are already on Earth. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this mission was originally a handover of this planet from one fairly hostile group to this rather more peaceful alliance.
So we now have three different alien groups here on Earth.
We have initially a group that is a subterranean race which is in control of the planet, and this group is being asked to hand back control of the planet to this alliance. The alliance involves both more peaceful groups and some fairly militaristic groups. So although the colony ship and these new beings that have arrived are from the same alliance, they are kind of different in their, I suppose, in the way that they think in terms of violence, warfare. You've got a fairly peaceful group, but they're aligned with another group who are fairly, I guess, more open to using force. And so these ones turn up. They make it quite clear to the subterranean group, leave the planet, or we're going to begin a planetary bombardment of your bases. We're going to root you out. It's not going to go well for you. And they explain that what they use is they don't just, come down laser fire. That makes nice movies, but that's not what they do. They drag in asteroids and large bodies from around a planet, pull them in, and they can bombard a planet. And they specifically describe the ability to be able to crack open a planet and destroy it from space. So you think of that, it makes our weaponry sound like pea shooters. And so what they said, they make this clear that we're going to do this. The second group say, we're going to leave. Most of them leave, and it's described as them going through a portal to Orion, is specifically highlighted. Some of them don't go, and a bombardment is initiated. And this is a multi-directional asteroid bombardment of the planet Earth, right? Cataclysmic. So I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. If this is a real event, surely it's going to leave some kind of geological evidence, right? And in fact, I was thinking initially, I should have heard of this. Something on this scale we would have perhaps, learned at school or seen on the Discovery Channel, or, you're kind of thinking this is a major event. There must be echoes of it somewhere. So I went digging into the records again, to see if there's anything in there. What really blew my mind here is that there wasn't any real papers out there, but what I found it was actually quite a recent news article. Now, this is going back to 2015, I think it was. A German geological team had uncovered evidence of a multi-directional asteroid bombardment of our planet, and the timing of it, 780,000 years ago, matches the timing of the australite material that I've discussed already, 780,000 years ago. Hand in gloves on the dates, hand in gloves match between this transmission and the evidence. Turns out that, I think they hit in Africa, Mexico, down in Tasmania, I think there's another couple of sites where these came in. The geologists researching it have suggested that the objects are different in their chemical composition. So they're not from a singular body breaking up, and they're not from, we can see a normal swarm, because obviously they're hitting from different directions at the same time, right? So that in itself obviously is really anomalous, because you don't expect to have a multi-directional bombardment anyway.
But let me say this, and
Sure.
coming from a science fiction background, bombarding a planet with asteroids is a key way of destroying a planet in science fiction. Basically throwing rocks from the sky is what we call it. There was a movie, This Island Earth, where one planet was bombarding another with asteroids. So this is not a concept that is new. This is a concept that goes back into the 1950s with the idea of bombarding a planet. So I just don't see where this is, a major validation for the idea.
Because it's in the transmission. That's what I'm telling you. And this second point is, it's impossible that Valerie could have known this, because bear in mind, she has published this transmission in 2003, and nobody knew this had happened until 2015. So you have to ask, how can she know that this has happened at that time?
And I'm saying this is something that's old in science fiction. I don't see that as a major validation. I'm sorry.
I can't. Well, let me go back. You have now the dates, absolute correlations. 780,000 years for the material, 780,000 years for the bombardment, both in this transmission. Total validations of what it's telling us, right?
And the third point?
So the third point is, of course, then the creation of Homo sapiens.
And how does that validate the story?
Right. So the survivors are working on modifying existing hominins, right? So what we have at that time are, of course, we have a large, widespread population of Homo erectus. We also now know that there were a population of smaller hominins, which are now what we call the predecessors to Homo floresiensis, and some of these early Homo that we find now that have recently been found up in the Philippines, that we know that there has been a population of what seems to have been Australopithecines that made their way all the way down to Southeast Asia. So we've got at least two fairly widespread hominin populations at that time. Right? We have the Homo erectus and these early diminutive hominins, very alike to Australopithecines, okay?
Which the Australopithecines are supposedly some of the direct descendants to the Homo sapiens.
Yeah, it's generally considered that one of the Australopithecines is the likely ancestor of Homo. That's right. So we've got a population of these. At that time, that's what we have, right? We don't have, obviously, Homo sapiens, there's no Neanderthals or anything like that. But what we do find is that at that period is when we start to get a load of anomalous changes in the genome, right? Again, at this same period, we find that there is a sudden fusion of two chromosomes, a head-to-head fusion that gives us chromosome 2, right? Chromosome 2 is interesting because we have not only a head-to-head fusion, but it's on an active gene, a gene which is to do with the brain, the reproductive system, the immune system, systems you want to get at if you're engineering a new hominin. Secondly, we have a total replacement of the initial population has 48 chromosomes. Right? What we see is not suddenly two populations of Homo, one with 48, one with 46, but there's an anomalous total replacement. And we know today that there's only humans with 46 chromosomes, right? Now this is unexpected, because more often than not, chromosome errors are problems. At best, they're neutral. Very rarely are they actually a benefit. Scientists tell us then to have this kind of total replacement, it indicates that there must have been a huge benefit to this change, firstly. Also, that it must have initially happened in a fairly small, isolated population where it could become persistent. Again, which is what you have if you have a control group. If you're working on changing something, you're going to be working initially with a fairly small control group, which is isolated from any other breeding populations. That's what you want. So these are the elements that the science tell us we would want to see a persistence of a change like this. But it's not only chromosome 2. We also see around the same time the sudden emergence of a number of really important brain genes. Now, some of these are described in very strange ways. There's one which is described as having appeared suddenly out of junk DNA, or what's called non-coding DNA, right? Just appears. They don't know how. Another one is described as being what appears to be a fragment from a longer gene, and they describe it again as looking almost as though it was cut, Xeroxed, and put back in. And remember, these are not my words. I'm paraphrasing from articles on the subject. So clearly,
articles where?
science papers, science articles on the subject.
Okay.
So what you find is that, again, they are referenced in the book, like reference. If people want to go where they can find the references. So what they find is not only that, and then you have these mysterious genes, and you have the anomalous sudden increase in cranial capacity, which suddenly rockets off. And again, if people do Google cranial capacity increase in early humans, you'll see the chart. It really accelerates at a crazy rate, and that's from approximately 800,000 years ago. So you have this cluster of anomalies, again, on that date. And if you follow the science, in the last couple of years, the model for when Homo sapiens emerged and for when it split from Neanderthals has been radically changed. It used to be considered that we diverged away from Neanderthals about 300 to 400,000 years ago, and that our common ancestor emerged about 500,000 years ago or so. Now, in the last 2 years, that's been radically changed by finds particularly in Spain at the Cima de los Huesos site. But anyway, what they've come to the conclusion of is that really this divergence has happened closer to 750 to 780,000 years ago. And a more recent article that people may have seen is based on teeth, hominin teeth, is suggesting 800,000 or earlier. So you've got two different angles to look at: the teeth evidence, the genetics, with them meeting in the middle on this date period around 700,000 to 800,000 years ago. Again,
I'm gonna have to break in here once
Sure.
again. The book is Hybrid Humans, Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy. I'm joined by Bruce R. Fenton, who's talking about this and presenting some of the evidence. I also suggest you take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, where there'll be a little bit of additional information if you want to take a look at that sort of thing. We will be back right after this, and stick around.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Eli Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Christopher Fulton is a survivor of the national security state. All he wanted to do was preserve history when he acquired a Cartier watch from the estate of President Kennedy's personal secretary. But that simple act set off a terrible chain reaction. He was pursued by the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI, thrust into the middle of the U.S. government's Assassination Records Review Board, even monitored and pursued by the Russian government. All because that Cartier watch was the missing link of evidence, a timepiece worn by JFK that fateful day in Dallas, a link resulting in Christopher being incarcerated and attacked for 9 years years because he opened a hidden chapter in history. The intriguing journey outlined fully in Christopher Fulton's memoir, The Inheritance, is available now through TrineDay.com or Amazon.com. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination by Christopher and Michelle Fulton is a must-read, an incredible tale of how easily our own government can overrule justice. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination.
I'm here with Bruce Fenton. We're talking about the scientific evidence of our 800,000-year-old alien legacy. And I do have a question. It may sound a little rude to you, but I don't find the validation to be completely persuasive. Is there additional information that I'm missing?
I'm going to have to put it back to you and just say, why is that? Because I'm not following. If you see what I'm saying, is that this is a transmission that has happened many, many years before this evidence existed. So for someone to have faked the transmission, it doesn't make sense because they couldn't have supported this at the time. So this can only be validated now, years later. So we have a time-stamped transmission, which has proven to be accurate.
But I guess my problem is we're talking about an artifact communication with Valerie Burrows. She said a couple of things, and
which she's written a book because it's quite a lot of things.
Understood. But it's the validation seems to be things that could, I guess, exist in the natural world. It doesn't necessarily require alien visitation for that to happen. That's what I'm getting at here. You know, you talk about the bombardment of the planet, for example, but that could be just a natural occurrence that is coincidental with the time frame that she set up.
Don't you find it a remarkable coincidence that all three of these events happened at 780,000 years ago? Three hugely anomalous events, all on the same moment in time.
I find it interesting, but I just don't find it overly persuasive. I guess it's interesting enough to me that I want to follow up on it and learn a little bit more about it.
Sure.
But I also have looked at in my investigations of UFOs, frankly, and I've gone through the same thing with other cases and other things where you seem to have validation, and as you check out that validation, you learn that it's not quite what it seems to be, and there are in fact coincidences that lend to this validation. So I get that she wrote the book in 2003, and some of this scientific evidence did not come into the forefront until after her book had been published, which is a wonderful validation of her book, I guess. But I don't understand. I guess I'm a little bit confused about how this validates alien visitation.
Well,
because
yeah, sure. I mean, one point there I'd loop back to the exploding object, that they would have to be an argument for how do we end up with a huge crystalline object orbiting this planet. I mean, that itself, that begs an answer, because I would love to see an academic. I mean, of course, I'm open to someone coming up and saying, well, look, maybe it's this or that. But at the moment, there is no explanation for why there would be a huge crystalline artifact, orbiting our planet, which just explodes for no reason. So again, there's anomalies within these different areas as well. Of course, and as I highlighted there, within the human origins, we have a number of anomalies there. And again, all on this timestamp. So I'm, of course, open to people who come up and say, well, I think it's this or I think it's that. But they need to address those anomalies and say, well, okay, what else would lead to us having a second moon that is made almost entirely of silica and which just explodes and rains down without any known cause, right? So they would still have to tackle those individual anomalies and say, well, okay, we can explain like this. And at the moment, that doesn't exist.
Well, I think about, you talk about the genetic mutations, for the lack of a better term. And I know in my studies, one of the precipitating events for a gene mutation would be a radiation burst from the sun. And that would cause all kinds of different, I guess, mutations, and only the ones that are beneficial to the race would persist, and the others would basically die out.
Well, I used to sort of think about that sort of thing. But in all of the studies that have been done using radiation, they've found that there's never been a positive mutation that's come out of it, right? Never. That's in all of the experiments that have been done. So although that in the past, I used to think that, could the solar radiation cause some kind of mutations? We know there's been major solar events. But in all trials done so far, it's either a neutral or negative results from radiation involved in mutations. So that's problematic. So for us to get so many positive changes, clustering is very unlikely to be something like radiation, where we know it's nearly always harmful.
So the suggestion is the genetic mutation had to be directed by an entity.
Well, I'll give you a more specific example, right? I know we haven't got much time, so I'll try and focus on a very specific one. Right, I appreciate there's an area called human accelerated regions. This is really cutting edge. So if people want to Google that, by all means. There is a particular stretch of code. I'm going to say there's a couple of hundred of these human accelerated regions. There are areas that have gone through radical changes in a very short period, which haven't been explained by science. There's a big mystery. One of them is 108 DNA letters long. And if you compare it, this same strip in a chicken and a chimpanzee, which was separated for 300 million years, you'll find there's a 3-letter difference. So they're called highly conserved regions. They very rarely change. 300 million years, 3 changes. Right. They compared the same strip between chimpanzees and humans, who were supposed to be split by 5 million years. What they found was an 18-letter difference. The statistical analysis at the moment is that there's a 0% chance of that happening by any understood evolutionary mechanisms, right? So this is a glaring problem in science right now. You've got a couple of hundred of these, right? And they're nearly all to do with the brain, the advantages that humans have got, and they go totally against all the known mechanisms of evolution. So those, if you want, are the most glaring anomalies, because nobody knows how we've ended up with a couple of hundred of these, and they go against all the pressures that we understand in evolution to conserve these really important segments of code that it seems as though something, we can call it a something or somebody, has managed to undo that and allow a very unique set of changes only in human beings, right? So you could say, okay, was it natural? But then someone has to come out and say, here's a mechanism different to yours, Bruce. Here's a natural way it could happen. At the moment, there's none, right? So the best model that we have, even if we weren't to say any of this other stuff about transmissions, the best model for those is something intelligent undoing the mechanisms that have kept those stable regions stable for hundreds of millions of years, and only in the human race, no other animals, right? So that alone is a glaring anomaly that needs to be tackled.
Well, I was going to say, if it was a sun-based radiation burst or something like that, you would expect the anomaly to show up in other
animals. Yeah, quite.
Yes,
yeah,
and it doesn't show up in them.
No.
So that is quite interesting.
So even without the other side, there is a glaring anomaly in the human genome. So
But even if we can't explain it today and we have no mechanism that we know of, maybe tomorrow somebody will come up with that mechanism, and wouldn't that kind of undo your validations?
Well, that goes for UFOs, that goes for ghosts, that goes for all anomalous subjects, lake monsters. At some point, somebody will come along and say, look, it's definitive. We know for sure what this is, or, 99% sure. And it may be what the independent researchers have suggested it is, or maybe it's different. And, all of us in this field live in those waters, right, where it could be that we've got it part right, part wrong.
Well, and I brought that up simply because, you had been talking about how this was, there's no explanation for it. And I merely wanted to point out, because there's no explanation today doesn't mean there won't be an explanation tomorrow. And I think that's something.
I'm always open to debating people who offer me evidence or perspective that is different or stronger than that which I argue. I have no problem with that.
Okay. All right. We have like a minute and a half left to go. Is there something you'd like to add that we haven't touched on?
Probably in that time scale, I probably won't deviate into anything else. Only that, of course, people are welcome to reach out to me and ask me questions. If there's bits of it they'd like a bit more on, yes, obviously they can read the book, but they can check out my articles, interviews, get that information for free out there as well. I don't want it just to be paying,
You have a lot of information on this ancientnews.net site, don't you, that they can check out as well?
There's quite a bit on there, on hybridhumans.net as well. And, to be honest, if they look for me on online, they'll find interviews and articles as well. So there's quite a lot out there. I try and give away as much as I can, for people. So I realize not everyone's got money for books. So there's a lot out there. And I would say that people should really be looking at these human accelerated regions if they really would like to dig a bit deeper. And the NASA papers you did ask me to refer to, I'll just quickly say There's a couple that aerodynamic analysis of tektites and their parent bodies is one NASA paper. And another one, the aerodynamic evidence pertaining to the entry of tektites into the Earth's atmosphere. So those are two of the handy papers. There's a lot more out there. Again, if people want to search for Australite tektite buttons, particularly, and the mystery that surrounds those. Just thinking of anything. Of course, the DNA subject, it's not hard if people want to Google when did Homo sapiens emerge. They'll find the latest papers on that. There's a big debate at the moment.
And your book has is completely footnoted and has the references in there.
It does, yeah,
material?
yeah.
Okay.
So they can go and find where I've got my evidence from. It's basically I will do my best to stick to mainstream sources, not because the mainstream's always right, but because if you don't, people will say it's based on woo-woo science or something. So I try my best to stick to those sources that people will find, I guess, not fake news.
Well, thank you, Bruce Fenton. I appreciate you taking time to chat with us about this. The book is Hybrid Humans, Scientific Evidence of Our 800,000-Year-Old Alien Legacy. The website is ancientnews.net. I will be back next week with... and my mind has just gone completely blank. I will be back next week with Steve Bassett. We'll be talking about disclosure. That's what we're going to be talking about because some of that stuff has been coming up in the news recently, and I thought it would be nice to talk to Steve Bassett about that. My website is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. The website for here is the X-Zone Broadcast Network at xavn.net, and I will be back in 167 hours.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie, natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Eli Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now to receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.